Hiya.
Hey.
So, guys, I'm here with Ben today from Trutune.
Trutune, yep.
And we're going to learn a little bit hopefully, about the history of the products and how it helps us all in the mountain biking world.
Sure thing.
So, Ben, tell me a little bit about, how Trutune came to be.
Okay, so it's quite an interesting story in that it started out as a research project at a university. It then got taken on, funded to research this further. So we had a couple of products that never really went anywhere in the acoustics thing, but are still ongoing now. Then went on to automotive. So I had a big project with Audi and their air spring design, which has been 6 or 7 years now, where they've licensed our technology.
Wow.
And then it's moved on from that to what else uses air springs, mountain bike suspension. So 3 years currently in, a year and a half in development, a year and a half as a saleable product.
So I'm intrigued because, I know that I've seen some of the clips on Instagram, and one of my mates has been swearing by it, and I rode with him the other day in Warning, and I could see he was visibly quicker. But it's not, we've spoken about this. It's not necessarily about making you ride faster. It's about making the experience more enjoyable. And that, for me, as an older guy riding, I can't afford to be falling off and breaking bones and knocking myself out, as I seem to be doing more often as I get less capable. But I think it's just increasing the enjoyment level. And if you've got a responsive fork that works well underneath you, then surely that will help.
It's a pretty good place to start of going how does this feel underfoot? How does a bike feel underneath you? Now, the better it feels, the more control you've got, the more grip you've got, the more compliance you've got, the more you have a better interaction with the bike, which I think at the end of the day is what the most enjoyable thing about mountain biking is. It's your interaction with the bike, the terrain. 100%. It isn't always about just going faster.
If I can get more engagement with my front end, it's going to make sense. Now, I'm yet to try one of these, so I'm completely blind, as you know. I've yet to try it, and I'm dying to try it. But the biggest question is, how the hell does it work? What is it all about? And you're talking about carbon, right?
Yeah, activated carbon.
Activated carbon. What is that?
Activated carbon, if you look at it under a microscope, it has a gigantic surface area, millions of tiny little crevices. Now, when you put this into a piston situation, you compress air into it, the air molecules find their way into all these little crevices.
Are you saying that it's almost like a sponge? It's almost like a tiny little sponge that will absorb air, but it won't take up volume.
Yeah, so it's actually a process called adsorption rather than absorption.
Okay, cool.
So
I like
adsorption and desorption as well, which happens instantly. So it doesn't absorb it and hold on to it. It's like the molecules find their way in, allows them to pack close together, and as soon as the pressure is released, they are released also. So that's where you get the effective volume increase. What that means is it gives you a region of compliant suspension. Now, the bigger the volume, the more compliance there is in the system. The smaller the volume, the more ramp there is. Now, increasing that range of compliance is obviously going to be a good thing. But there's one other process as well, which is probably more relevant in a mountain bike fork, because we don't necessarily just need more volume. That doesn't solve so many problems. It helps with some things. It helps flatten out the spring curve. Mm-hmm. But the most notable one is what happens on fast compressions. So when you have a fast compression on an air spring, there's a tiny burst of heat. It's not a heat that accumulates over time, it's known as working heat. Now, that heat causes these molecules to resist each other, which causes an expansion, which causes stiffness. So on a slow compression, a static compression like this, you get a certain spring rate. On a fast compression, you get a higher spring rate. So this is something manufacturers are having to work around. You get different spring rates depending on how fast the compression speed is.
It feels like 80% of your riding is on your front.
The front end is where we get most of the feedback from. Yeah. Our hands are a lot more sensitive than our feet, for example. Also, braking-wise, hard braking, probably 80% of it is going to be on the front wheel. Yeah. If you wash out the back, you're not necessarily going to crash. You wash out the front, it's really hard to cling onto it. So it's where we have a lot of interaction. Also, in suspension design, you don't have so many problems with the rear because actually they've came up with pretty good solutions already, and that is in the form of a coil spring.
Yeah.
So
and also the linkage as well, you know.
So this is where people often will say, why don't you just put a coil in the front? Which is a really good question because all of a sudden you've got a linear spring rate, which gives you more support in the middle. You get less ramp forces towards the ends, but then you have this problem of what happens on the big compressions. You need more support on big compressions.
Yeah.
On the rear end, like you just said about the linkage, they've built the progression into the linkage. So you can have a linear spring rate, which is really predictable. It works really well with your damping. And the compression, the progression, is built into the spring rate. So you don't have that problem. On a fork, there's no linkage.
Yeah, okay.
So if you've got a coil, you need getting the right spring rate is a challenge, as it is on the rear. The next thing is how do you build in progression to the system?
Yeah, okay. So I believe you got something to demo what you're talking about as well.
Yeah, so this is something that we use at all the trade shows because it sounds like snake oil. There's no getting around it.
Come on, let's have a look at it. What is it?
So all it is a syringe.
Okay.
With the end blocked off.
Okay.
This is just to replicate an air spring.
Okay.
So we've got our air chamber, our piston.
Yeah.
This little guide here. Just pay attention when you're pressing it. Between 1 and 2 is your sag.
Yeah.
You spend most of your time between 3 and 5 when you're riding a bike.
Uh-huh.
And this is obviously the end stroke. Pay attention to how hard it is to press throughout these different ranges.
Okay.
Ramps up quick, right?
Yeah.
So this area here is what's taking all your big impacts.
Yeah.
Now you pop one of these in.
Is this the product?
This is the product.
Can I just have a quick look at that?
Yeah. So that is just packed full of activated carbon.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it takes the place of tokens, or you can tune it with tokens. Now this is the bit why we use these syringes, where people say, if I put this in here, that's made out of something tangible. That's going to reduce the volume. So that should make this harder to compress.
Right?
Yeah. I get past 5.
Well, that's insane. That's nuts. I've gone right up to the actual.
Yeah. Try it again without. Try and get it to where you got it just then.
No chance.
No chance.
That's bonkers. I mean, that's kind of. No wonder he did a PhD in this and like trying to prove it wrong. Right?
Yeah, because it defies logic, doesn't it?
It does. It totally defies logic. That is incredible.
Yeah. Now this is just for demonstration purposes. It's to give you an idea of what's going on in your suspension fork. The next big thing is why. Why would you want to make it easier to compress? And it's going back to what I was saying about the range of compliance.
Yeah.
Like you can feel on the syringe there, at the bottom there, it's not got as much resistance.
Yeah.
Now this is static. You can't physically do it as fast as the sort of speed you get up to when you're riding a bike. Now this makes the spring rate more compliant on faster compressions.
Okay.
Which is where you really want compliance, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like if you're hard braking and then you hit a section of braking bumps, you're on the brakes, you're already into the deeper, the harder bit of travel. We're relying currently with air springs on damping to control that, and manufacturers have got really clever with it. They've done some really good work with making these dampers work really well. So you've got high speed compression, low speed compression, damping, different circuits. So you get a different damping rate depending on the speed of compression. So there have been workarounds, but they're always butted up against the physical downside of an air spring.
Mm-hmm.
Now, air springs aren't all bad, because actually having some ramp in a system is a really good thing on a fork. Like we want to have supple suspension over little bits when we're just cruising along, and if we smash into something or cock up a line and hit into a bunch of big square edge rocks, you don't want to be bottoming out, because as soon as you bottom out you have no suspension, and that's where everything goes wrong.
Do the manufacturers know about this tech? And
good question.
And why are they not taking your legs from you and saying, we're buying up all this stuff, we want it. Fox wants it. Rockshots wants it, Olin's want it.
It's a very good question, and I don't know all of the answers to that. It does baffle me from doing all the testing. Like every time I test a new product and project for new developments, I go back to the stock fork, and it baffles me. Like I struggle to ride with it nowadays, and
I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
from what everybody's said about it,
Yeah.
there is no way that they will ride without it. You know,
Yeah.
so for me, it's a no-brainer that
Yeah.
a fork manufacturer wouldn't
Yeah.
be taking you guys really seriously.
And it's not that we're not being taken seriously. So we're doing work with a few manufacturers.
Okay.
We can't talk about any of it here.
Yeah.
There's nothing agreed or anything like that just yet. But there have been extensive testing. And answering your question, why aren't they taking us on now, is because they already have a development plan. And these development plan go
Last a while.
They last a long while. So I don't know all the details of it, but
Yeah.
with Audi, for example, it was a 5-year project
yeah.
to bring that to market. It's to be seen whether anyone takes this up.
Well, to be honest with you, who cares? Like, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, the fact is that
Yeah.
we can, I can just buy this stuff from you for a
Yeah.
small amount of money, and it will change my forks and how they work. That's
Yeah.
enough for me. So that should
Yeah.
be enough for anybody, really. So
Yeah.
and so we don't really want people monopolising it. Talking as a layman and
Yeah.
a rider,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to have to be buying. Oh, you can only buy Ohlins, or you can only buy Fox
Yeah.
because they've got your tech in it and they've bought the patent to it. So that's
Yeah.
it. Nobody else has it. I would rather that you
Yeah,
guys
right.
hold on to it for the sake of us
Yeah, I mean,
mere mortals. Just to,
Yeah, and at
just
the
to have
moment,
it.
it is nice to be able to provide solutions to multiple manufacturers. That
Yeah.
might not always be the case. But also, one thing to note there, we don't do it for everyone. And actually, it's because some manufacturers have come up with different solutions to at least one of the problems, which is end-stroke ramp,
Yeah.
controlling that. So there's a couple spring to mind. So Ohlins, Manitou as well, who've got a really good following on the kind of underground scene. They've got a secondary positive air chamber,
Okay.
which is effectively a floating piston
Yes.
that you charge independently.
I've seen that. Yeah. Okay.
That-
So we've got a couple. You've got your bike. I've got my bike here
Yeah.
that isn't set up. How easy is it to do?
It's just literally let the air out, take the top cap off, clip it in, put it back together, and then recharge it. Now there's going to be a couple of different things on pressure and a couple of things to consider on damping, but
Well,
all in all, 10 minutes.
well, we'll do that.
Right, we're going to do a setup here on Johnny's bike. So we've had a little chat before about the kind of riding he does. Rides at Warncliffe Woods, fairly handy rider, is using all his travel on this Lyric here. So we're going to focus on the fork. We've just checked the sag is running about 20%, which is pretty good for around a soft setup. I'm just going to check the air. I'm going to check the air pressure just for a benchmark. Now you're best off with a digital pump, which this isn't, because I broke mine. But it doesn't really matter so long as you're using the same one. So we lost a bit there, but that was starting at bang on 70 PSI. And check for tokens. We've got 2 tokens in there currently. I'm going to start off by adding our flow in with 1 in this situation. So it's a really good place to start is removing 1. So taking 1 token out, had 2 in before. Screw the flow into this. It's really important here that you check what your maximum volume spaces is on this. Fine in this fork, but it's different on each travel variant and each model. And this works well across the board, is to reduce rebound a couple of clicks. So go here, so anti-clockwise. 2 clicks there, and I'm going to add a little bit of low speed compression. 2 clicks on that. And then we'll check sag. Do you want to do sag?
Yeah.
Okay, so stand straight up. And then off. So at 25, so the pressure increase is to get the same sag measurement, so I'm just going to add some more pressure in. 10% is very much a guide, as is sag. but it's always good to try and get to the same place we started. So I'm going to try and get to 20%. No. Yeah, I reckon let's go 92. Remember how it felt before?
Yeah, yeah.
We put significantly more pressure in.
Yeah.
Have a little feel, just bouncing up just now. Doesn't feel quite as stiff, right?
No, it's not. Definitely not.
Now, next thing we want to check is rebound speed. So it will change the feeling of the rebound speed, mostly due to the extra pressure that we've put in. The quickest way of doing this is just to press hard into the bars and not restrict it coming back up. So that's like actually crazy fast. So I'm just actually going to slow that down a little bit. We want it so it's like the front wheel feels like it's about to come off the ground. If it comes off the ground, it's too fast. And then what we want to try and do is get it quite as close as we can with the rear. So that speed, now you can see that's quite a bit slower. I'm going to try and slow this down a little bit so it gets more in line with the back, because I don't want it to feel too unusual for you.
Yeah.
I checked this before and it was quite well balanced. That's a bit closer now.
Yeah.
You can see it's moving about the same kind of rate. That's what we want of balancing bike. A lot of people, when they're going into doing jumps and feeling like they're getting bucked, a lot of time it's because the back is faster than the front. Cool.
But yeah, really interesting. Can't wait to try it out.
Cool.
Thanks, man.